Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of our Town Administrator Update, our chance to talk with Burlington Town Administrator Paul Sagarino about what's going on in town. Paul, thanks once again for taking some time and coming in.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
So it's been a little while since we've done one of these. So in that intervening time, we did have technically January, but in February town meeting. I think probably for our purposes, the two bigger articles that were on the agenda or on the warrant were the bylaw changes that were put forward at this recommendation of Melissa Tintokalis, our Economic Development Director. Do you want to talk about first the sort of change that allows like these new different types of businesses to come in?
Yeah, it was really, the first one, Rich, was a sort of a change in uses in various sectors of the town, which would allow, or at least clarify for different types of companies to sort of go into the mall, sort of more what they call experiential type uses, little museums, aquariums, play areas.
Right. Virtual reality.
Yeah,
things
virtual
like that.
reality type things. And, I think with the changing in the retail and the changing retail landscape, obviously I think there's a move towards less of your traditional apparel type stores and people are looking for things to do and places to go and visit, and I think that we were looking to expand the possibilities. And I think there's a tenant that has gone in at the mall called Camped, which is sort of meets that definition, but it really could be a variety of different things, whether it's an educational or if it's just a play, fun thing type to do for adults all the way down to children. And the second very important one was an expansion of the outdoor dining regulations. We've heard consistently throughout the pandemic, that may be the only good thing to come from the pandemic really is that, this embracing of people wanting to eat outside and enjoy the outdoor spaces and to be able to provide, a flexible way for businesses to accomplish that during, between April and November. I think it was really well received by the residents and businesses alike. So kudos to Melissa for those initiatives, and I know she worked very closely with Kristen Kastner in the planning department throughout this entire thing, and we're really pleased that town meeting supported those two items.
Right, and when you're talking about the expanded outdoor seating, that's sort of like the temporary, the non permanent patios that people see, restaurants going out into sidewalks or in parking lots, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether they put a tent outside, if it becomes built onto the premises, then it takes on a different life and would go through a more typical permitting process. But these types of installations are more like the temporary ones that we sort of saw. And there's a task force of town departments that review those requests. We came up with a system that really isn't expensive. There's no legal or lawyers involved, and we feel as though we have good coverage from all the departments in order to highlight any potential safety issues or parking issues and sort of address those with the application. But the important thing is it's flexible and it's not really a burdensome, time-consuming process for businesses, because as we know, they're suffering. And again, I think people have really embraced the outdoor dining, and I think it's something that folks, residents and businesses alike want to see stick around.
Yeah, absolutely. I know my wife and I always prefer eating outside if it's at all possible.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as it's not too cold out, right?
Exactly. We've also had a couple updates recently. I know there was talk about the rideshare program that the town has for seniors and people with disabilities. Just, since I know, the program started, COVID hit, obviously that was a big impact on it with people not really wanting to get into cars with strangers, but it seems like it's kind of coming back.
Yes, and unfortunately we unveiled that program upon the discontinuance of the B line, and it happened right before at the beginning of the pandemic. So as you mentioned, it started out really quite slow. The numbers are really ramping up, and I think what we need to do is focus on advertising the program to residents and getting the word out to more people that may avail themselves to the service. What the feedback that we're getting, our residents really like the service. Unlike a fixed route transportation system, it's door to door. A resident would have the ability to take a trip outside of town. For example, if they went to Winchester Hospital instead of Leahy, and this provides for that with the same reimbursement. They may have to pay a little bit more, but that's an added benefit, I think, is to not be limited to the areas where a fixed route transportation system ran. And the other thing is that the service is available at hours that the Beeline typically wasn't available. So after hours and weekends, somebody can use this program for transportation. So it really expands their options as opposed to just being available between 8 and 4, Monday through Friday. So that's the positive feedback that we've heard from people that are using the system. Again, we have a long way to go. I think that there's probably residents out there that could avail themselves to the system, and I think it's we'll be looking on ways to get the word out. I think there was a segment done down here at BCAT fairly recently with Marge.
Yeah, we talked.
And I think that we get the word out and just see that how we can enhance that program going forward. But the numbers are ramping up. It started out very slow, but we're pretty pleased with the progress on that to date.
Excellent. Another thing that came up, I think it was at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, we the board, or you through the board, appointed our conservation director John Keeley to the North Shore Water Resilience Task Force. Sort of what's the goal of that organization?
So that organization is looking out for the Ipswich River watershed.
Right.
The town of Burlington doesn't draw any water from that watershed, but the northern part of town is a big part of
it's like the start of it.
Right? Yeah. So we don't actually take water from that, but that is a river that is typically suffers a lot during drought conditions, and particularly as you get closer to the North Shore, many of those communities rely on that source for their water. So I think it was set up by Senator Bruce Tarr, and we were invited to a meeting with him and Representative Gordon, and they were looking to try to build this coalition of people to sort of look out for that watershed, preserve it, make sure that it's sustainable. And again, we don't actually take water from that watershed, but the northern part of the town near Wilmington, a pretty substantial part of the town actually drains into the Ipswich River watershed. So that's why we were invited to be a part of it. And I can't think of anyone better than John Keeley. Just based upon his work and his natural, enjoyment. He loves being a part of things like that. It's just natural for him. So he was the perfect person to appoint to that. So we're looking forward to what ideas that they bring forward to us in the future.
Yeah, and I was sort of startled when he said at the meeting that the Ipswich River is one of the most endangered in the country, just from like so many different communities and big ones drawing from it. No,
absolutely. I think it runs borderline almost dry during some significant drought and lack of rainfall. So it's definitely a problematic one. And again, thankfully we don't draw any water from there, but at the same time, we want to participate. We want to make sure that it's healthy and sustainable, just as a natural, natural
good citizens of the world that
exactly.
We want to be. I know it's March, so we got a couple months, but we're looking. I'm sure you're already very much focused on Maytown meeting. So I know the budget process is going through right now. How's everything kind of moving along?
Everything, we just started with the big presentation last week. We'll be before Ways and Means. Departments will be going forward every Wednesday. We start tonight to actually do the individual departmental reviews. And there's really been no surprises since we started the budget process. So we're excited with the progress of that. We'll be more excited once the review's over.
Sure.
And, we also are beginning to cull through the list of department requests for the so-called warrant articles. That would be capital purchases, trucks, playground renovations, and things of that nature that we sort of fund outside the budget. And I would say that the list looks fairly consistent with most years. There's nothing out of the blue there. It's trucks. There's some big ticket items like the fire department aerial tower truck and things of that nature. So there wasn't anything that's jumped out at me yet on that list, but we still haven't gone through them thoroughly yet. That'll be the next step for us internally, and provide that to the Capital Budget Committee and start to move those articles through the Ways and Means process. Probably the other big thing that's going to come up at the Maytown meeting is the question of the Community Preservation Act. We have a pretty diligent group in town working to bring that to town meeting. They were pretty far advanced in bringing it to us, and then they sort of pulled back prior to the pandemic. So they were ready to bring it to that May town meeting. So kudos to them for their patience, and I know that they worked very hard at it a couple years ago, and I know that they're working very hard to bring the concept to us this year. So that'll be an interesting discussion and question at town meeting, I see.
Yeah, so is it just a town meeting? Because I remember there was also discussion about, having it as on a ballot, like during an election. Is that a necessary step, or was that just a different option?
I'm gonna have to refresh myself.
Yeah,
on
me
that.
too.
I don't recall it having to go to the ballot, but it may.
Okay. Because I remember there was discussion about, whether they wanted to do it on a town election or a presidential one, and
That's interesting. I think you might be right. You might be right on that.
I'll have to go back and rehash the old notes.
I believe you're correct on that. Like I say, my brain's a little foggy.
I hear you.
Over the past couple of years, but
I know. Time, what is it, really?
I actually worked for the town of Lincoln years ago when they were one of the first communities to implement the Community Preservation Act. So I used to be pretty fluent in it back in those days.
And just last thing, I know, we did a tour of the police department, sort of having Chief Brown sort of point out all the different issues that they have over there, and it seems like quite an extensive list. Is there any sort of movement, at least into looking into, possibly doing something with that building?
Yes, I mean, at the board's direction, we're ready to proceed with a feasibility study for that location, and just to sort of answer the questions, can it fit on the existing site? Is that a possibility if the town wants to put it where the police station is now? Or if not, where are some other alternative locations? As everybody is aware, we're very short on municipal land, so we don't have a lot of municipal land. So we'd have to look internally there, as well as consider other parcels that may be for sale that come along. But I know that location is important to the department as well. If possible, you'd like to site it in the center of town where it is now. But again, I think there's a lot of questions to be answered, and this is just the first step. I think we would all agree that we need a new one, but trying to figure out where to put it, I think, is going to be the challenge. And we'll start with that.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, I think that's kind of at least covers enough for this update. I very much, as always, appreciate you taking the time and coming down and talking with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Rich. Thank you for having me.
All right. Until next time.